I'll take over.
not where. You all right?
Yeah, yep. Here we go.
Return and take your brethren back. Mercy and truth be with you. The Ittai answered the king and said, as the Lord lives, and as my Lord the king lives, surely in whatever place my Lord the king shall be, whether in death or life, even there also your servant will be. So David said to the Ittai, go and cross over. Then, then Ittai the Gittite and all his men and all the little ones who were with him crossed over, and all the country wept with a loud voice. There's a funny noise going on somewhere.
Yeah, yeah,
A
yeah. I
loud
think
voice,
there's a poor reception somewhere. I'll just mute you just in case, Carolyn. I think we've muted everyone else. There we go. That's it. Right.
and all the country wept with a loud voice, and all the people crossed over. The king himself also crossed over the brook Kidron, and all the people crossed over toward the way of the wilderness.
And Abiathar came up, and behold, Zadok came also with all the Levites, bearing the ark of the covenant of the Lord. And they set down the ark until the people had passed out of the city. Then the king said to Zadok, carry the ark of God back into the city. If I find favor in the eyes of the Lord, he will bring me back, and let me see both it and his dwelling place. But if he says, I have no pleasure in you, behold, here I am. Let him do to me what seems good to him. The king also said to Zadok the priest, are you not a seer? Go back to the city in peace with your two sons, Ahimaaz your son, and Jonathan the son of Abiathar. See, I will wait at the fords of the wilderness until word comes from you to inform me. So Zadok and Abiathar carried the ark of the Lord back to Jerusalem and remained there. But David went up the ascent of the Mount of Olives, weeping as he went, barefooted with his head covered. And all the people who were with him covered their heads and went up weeping as they went. And it was told David, Ahithophel is among the conspirators with Absalom. And David said, O Lord, please turn the counsel of Ahithophel into foolishness. While David was coming to the summit where God was worshipped, behold, Ashuai the Archite came to meet him with his coat torn and dirt on his head. David said to him, if you go on with me, you will be a burden to me. But if you return to the city and say to Absalom, I will be your servant, O king, as I have been your father's servant in the past, so now I'll be your servant. Then you will defeat for me the counsel of Ahithophel. Are not Zadok and Abiathar priests with you there? So whatever you hear from the king's house, tell it to Zadok and Abiathar the priests. Behold, their two sons are there, Ahimaaz and Zadok's son, and Jonathan Abiathar's son. And so by them you shall send to me everything you hear. So Hushai, David's friend, came to the city just as Absalom was entering Jerusalem. So what we've got here is David's response is he has to run for his life. And he takes with him the court. And people are saying, well, the ark's got to go with David. So they get the ark going. And David says, no, no, send it back to the city. And he says several things. His whole demeanor, his whole response is not self-protection here, just. It is self-protection, as he's had the whole way through his life. If he didn't protect himself, he would have been in trouble. But it's that sense of God's in it. Send the ark back. If God wants, I'll be back there with the ark. Actually, this is happening to me, but, go and be there. And he's putting things around. But he's also sending members of the court back into the court to help him know what's going on. But also, he's sending advisors back to help undermine the advice of this advisor. So not only is he praying something, but he's also practically acting on it. So I don't know if that's a helpful summary of what's happening. David's running for his life. Interesting places he's passing, the Mount of Olives. I think we've heard of that before. And he's weeping as he went, which is interesting as well. So I'll throw that open. Any comments anyone's got?
I was reading Psalms today, Psalm 3. And Psalm 3 is written at this particular time. It says at the start, the Psalm of David when he fled from Absalom, his son. And the Psalms are really good because it actually shows David's heart. As you're reading the narrative, you're actually hearing what he's thinking. And he says in Psalm 3, Lord, how they have increased who trouble me. Many are they who rise up against me. Many are they who say of me, there is no help for him in God. But you, O Lord, are the shield for me, my glory, and the one who lifts up my head. I cried to the Lord with my voice, and he heard me from his holy hill. I lay down and slept. I awoke, for the Lord sustained me. I will not be afraid of 10,000 of people who have set themselves against me all around. Arise, O Lord, save me, O my God, for you have struck all my enemies on the cheekbone. You have broken the teeth of the ungodly. Salvation belongs to the Lord. Your blessing is upon your people. So it's sort of when you're trying to understand what's going on in David's heart and mind, it's good to read the relevant psalm, because that's written by him, and it just reveals his thoughts, because you can misjudge him by the actions that he's taking, because you could say, well, he's a bit weak here. He's running away from Absalom, but it's a fulfillment of that prophecy that Nathan said right back in chapter 12. That actually this would happen. And so David decides that he probably knows Absalom, and he knows that he'd be in danger of being killed if he stayed in Jerusalem. So he decides to get out of Jerusalem, and knows that God will actually keep him, because he's appointed by God as king. And I think after this event, he comes back with a much stronger heart. But we'll see about that later.
Yeah. And anyone else like to dive in on this?
So I missed some of it because I had this big thing come up in my screen saying it's being recorded, and I couldn't get anything else. So I had to go off and then come back in.
Right.
And so
Sorry.
Lost completely now. I don't know where I am.
Yeah. So we've read on a bit, and we've got to the point where David's fled Jerusalem, but he sent advisors back. So we've gone down as far as the end of 15. So I don't know if anything. So David's just looked at Psalm 3, which is a psalm that David wrote around this time, and I think it's an incredible psalm. It gives us his internal thoughts in this process, and I think that's, people often write about the victorious times in your life, not the low times, or they write in a way that presents themselves as the star of the show. But here you've got David writing with God as the star of the show, and it's beautiful.
I think as you read the Psalms, I've sort of seen it in a different light recently, because as David moves through the Psalms, you can sense his increasing depth of relationship with God as he meets adversity, as he meets success and everything, and in the end he gives you some really good advice as to how to continue. But that's a whole new study, I guess. We'll get down there.
It sounds like you're going to write a commentary on Psalms there, David. It'd be very good, linking all these things together. But that's the beauty of going through this bit by bit.
Yeah.
we get a chance to look at some of these things. I think it shows that there are people still loyal to David.
Yeah.
They haven't given up on him. And actually, some of these guys are willing to put themselves into risky positions for David. Because if they were suspected of being on David's side, they could be killed. But they're willing to go back, willing to go into these settings. And Zadok is a seer, as he says, which is a prophetic and a priest. So he has a prophetic edge to him. And David has recognized this, says, you're a seer. Go in and see. And then tell your boy, go running with this message to David. And actually, we've got a system of communication built when all the other lines of communication are probably damaged. So David's got a clear line of communication straight into the king's courts, possibly. And that's what he's going for.
Is this the Zadok that Handel wrote about? Zadok the priest?
Probably. I don't know what he wrote.
The coronation.
Yeah.
Coronations. They play Zadok the priest.
Yeah.
Well, I guess we're going to hear it soon. It's May, is it? We get to hear Zadok the priest.
Yeah. You can go on YouTube and pick it up. It's quite a good one.
Very good. So, just looking at this, I think he's sending people back in. He's sending in this guy Ittai and his men and little ones, and he's saying that he needs to go back, and he's also suggesting that an advisor goes back. He's suggesting the priest goes back. He's suggesting the ark goes back, and I guess if you wanted to know, is David going to fight or just roll over? Is he just preserving his life and he's quite happy with Absalom having the throne? That's clearly not the case. God's saying, I might be back. If God wills it, I'll be back for the ark. If God wills it, it shows that David's going to fight this. But he's in no position strategically to fight it then and there. He has to get out. He who runs and fights, he who fights and runs away lives to fight another day. So it's that kind of having to head for the hills.
You can see that actually the Absalom, his assessment of Absalom is that he's actually here after himself. He's after David, not his household, because he leaves some people behind to look at. I love that phrase. He's left his concubines behind to look after the house. Obviously, he's concerned about the maintenance of his house.
Yeah. But it's also another sense he's saying he'll be back.
Yeah, that's what I was just thinking.
Yeah. So keep the house tidy. Yeah, but also he's leaving people behind whose lives are not in danger. At the forefront of things, the people whose lives are threats. So his sons are in danger. David's sons. They're threats to Absalom. Anything that's a threat to Absalom needs to leave Jerusalem pretty swift. And actually, there's David's clearing those guys out, but the guys who's not at risk, who might be useful, he's sending back in. And so his main principles he's building around is he's trusting God to see him through it. Big one. He's willing to fight against it. Another big one. And then he's putting pieces in place strategically for information into this. He wants information. He wants to know what's happening, and then beyond that, he's he hasn't begun to gather the army yet that's going to fight with him. He hasn't gathered. He's not running around trying to find, where Job is with all of this. He's not running around trying to do all those kind of things. His main focus is, I need information of what's happening. I need some of these things in place, and he's running for the hills as quick as he can. I think that's some interesting things there. And it's also interesting that Absalom, although Joab has really put him in place by getting him invited back, he set fire to Joab's, all of Joab's fields. So Joab is not likely to be Absalom's general, let's just say. And so that's and probably Joab is a threat to Absalom's power as well.
Sorry.
Yeah, go for it.
Just sort of kicking back a bit and thinking about David's relationship with Absalom. Although he sort of accepted Absalom back into Jerusalem, and then eventually agreed to meet with him, and then it says then the king kissed Absalom. There's no mention of any discussion between them, and I'm wondering whether David is probably could he have forgiven Absalom for the act, but recognizes Absalom for who he really is, and is wary of him all the way through, and he should have perhaps he should have done something a bit earlier to stop it happening. It's difficult to judge from this distance, isn't it?
It is, yeah, very, very difficult. And with the scale of things, and this is what you sort of say, with all the different wives David has, all the different subsections of his family, all the different angles on things, it's very complex. It's not like being able to say, well, I've got these two sons, let's make sure they grown up well, or these children in my house that are no, he's probably got a few dotted around in different. It's very difficult to have them all. How do you manage them with different moms and all this kind of thing? It's very complicated. And so the discipline, is not there early on when it probably could be. You've got this rivalry between people. I've just been listening to a number of podcasts. I had to travel on Monday, and podcasts are a great way to get a journey trimmed down. And so I've been listening to history ones about the rivalry between royal families. And it goes way back in history. Romulus and Remus, it goes all the way back into this. So that rivalry between siblings has been there in royal families famously, made very famous by Shakespeare as well. So there's a lot of those things in the background that are not peaceful, and old wounds and old scars and things are well set in concrete by this point. So the interesting thing, verse 30, he went up the ascent of the Mount of Olives, and was weeping, and we've got Jesus at the Mount of Olives, have we? And weeping. So it's just interesting. There's some interesting interplay there. Between the venue, the kind of like location, but you've got Hushai, who is the advisor, and his prayer in defense with the strategic advice that Absalom is going to have from this guy. He's blisteringly brilliant on his advice. David rates him highly. And his only defense against this guy really is, God, if you can only turn his wisdom into foolishness. And in the New Testament, we find Paul saying, actually, the wisdom of this world is foolishness in comparison with God's wisdom. And the wisdom that God has is foolishness to those who are perishing, but is life to those who are who come into the kingdom. So the wisdom of God is something far beyond our wisdom, and that appeal is an interesting appeal from David. Lord, let his wisdom become foolishness. Carolyn?
Yeah, no, I was very interested to see what David said about Psalm 3. So I went back and read it.
Yeah.
And that talks about wisdom, doesn't it, David?
Yeah.
It talks about the righteous, and the way of the righteous is blessed. And and he's seeing that his position as leader, God will bless that in the end, sort of thing. He's sort of like trusting in God by the end of it.
Yeah.
Putting his trust in God. Must have been very hard for him if it was a son.
Yeah. And I think this is huge. And I think his trust of God, like you're saying, Carolyn, absolutely blisteringly brilliant. And the psalm he wrote mentioning that is fantastic as well. But I think this trust of God, David has been through how many battles, how many attempts in his life? How many people have tried to kill David through his lifetime? I think a lot. He had the Philistines trying to kill him. He has had bears. He's had lions. He's had Saul trying to throw spears at him. He's had Saul sending the whole army after him. He's had Philistines trying to kill him. He's had to dribble down his beard. He's been through situation after situation after situation. And here, when it's his own family, he's going, hey, Lord, you can rescue me, you can save me. His trust's there, like you're saying, Carolyn. His trust's in God, and for God to help him overcome. And I think that's such a powerful lesson to us, in that. I think we've got 10 minutes left, so I think we could bring it a little bit further on into chapter 16 and go as far as verse 4. And so it goes, when David had passed a little beyond the summit, Ziba, the servant of Mephibosheth, met him with a couple of donkeys saddled, bearing 200 loaves of bread, 100 bunches of raisins, and 100 of summer fruits, and a skin of wine. And the king said to Ziba, why have you brought these? And Ziba answered, the donkeys are for the king's household to ride on. The bread and the summer fruit is for the young men to eat, and the wine is for those who faint in the wilderness to drink. And the king said, where is your master's son? And Ziba said to the Lord, behold, he remains in Jerusalem. For he said, today the house of Israel will give me back the kingdom of my father. Then the king said to Ziba, behold, all that belonged to Mephibosheth is now yours. And Ziba said, I pay homage. Let me ever find favor in your sight, my lord the king. So you find, if you remember, Mephibosheth was David's son who was dropped when he was 5 years old and damaged his legs, and David had taken him into his court and fed him at his table.
Saul's son, wasn't he?
Yeah, sorry, Jonathan's son. Sorry, Jonathan's son. Yeah.
Jonathan.
So it was Jonathan's son who'd been dropped, and David was looking for people from Saul's family when he came into power, and found this guy and said he'll eat at the king's table. And so you've got this situation where the servant arrives and gives supplies to David, and then says, actually, now you've got to remember the servant Ziba, he had been in charge of that estate that belonged to Mephibosheth, and then Mephibosheth was given it back, and so he was then asked to run it for Mephibosheth. And then Mephibosheth here appears to be staying in Jerusalem and hoping he can get the kingdom back.
Yeah.
And he seems to be doing a shirty thing here, like, oh well, he's trying to get one over on David. But all may not be as it seems, and this is the fog of war. This is the fog of mess. Things that sometimes seem one way may seem another way later on. But what David does is instantly says, right, you see, you've run that estate. I gave it back to Mephibosheth. It's now back to you. and the guy's done a very clever move here, siding with David. But I think it's very dicey and difficult, and there's a lot of people swearing allegiance and a lot of things going on. Some of the guys that David sent back appear to be with Absalom but aren't, and so you've got all this kind of mess of war and hidden schemes and plans and all of that going on. So I don't know if anyone wants to chip into that.
You said it all, really.
Did I? I don't know if I did, but I think there may be more.
Pretty much spoke it all out, really.
Yeah.
Made it clear.
But I think it's interesting when the structures move, what people do. And when the structures that you build around, oh, there's the king, everything works to the king, all of a sudden the king might not be the king, it might be his son Absalom. Oh, how do things work? And what you have is something shows the hearts of human beings in a time like this. Who are they going to be loyal to? What is their loyalty going to be about? What are they going to build around in this new season of uncertainty? And it's a bit like COVID, all the structures, we're seeing a load of structures in the UK struggling, and strikes and all these things going on. Actually, how do we build? How do we move forward? How do you build with integrity? How do you move forward with integrity in some of these things? Is what these people are struggling with a little bit, and that's quite a difficult way forward. And so where there's different allegiances here, you're seeing what's in people's hearts come out. And one of the things that it says in the Bible about Jesus, a prophecy about Jesus, it says that actually his allegiance and all of this is he will cause the fall and rise of many in Israel, and by him the hearts of many will be revealed. And I think in this, David's this civil war is beginning to show where people's hearts are. Everyone can say yes, yes when the structures are nice and clear, but when they're not, there's some of that. Where is your heart at? And we're seeing some of this by people's allegiances. David?
Yeah, I just what do you call it when you're warning about something in the future? You'll find that Ziba is not actually telling the truth.
Yeah, I was hinting towards that. Yes.
He's trying to manipulate things so that he can get his master's vineyards or whatever it is that he has. No, we'll find out later on though.
Yeah, and I think with that you see where his heart is. He was naffed off with David giving the thing to Mephibosheth, and he wanted it for himself.
That's right.
And he sees this opportunity. How can I serve myself? Oh, this is how I'll do it. I'll arrive with some raisins and some wine and some bread, and it's buy this off with David.
So he lies about Mephibosheth.
Yeah, he does. But in that, he's using the change to bring about what some of the desires in his heart, and some of his pettiness is being exposed, and will be exposed much further later on. But you see some of that, and it's a very interesting time, the fog of war, and the mess that's going on. But as David's saying, his allegiance is to God, and God will bring it about, and he's following God. and walking with him. And that's very powerful, and that's the right way forward. And I think in all things we need to check that our petty jealousies, our pettiness in our heart is surrendered to God, and actually we go his way and we lay those things away. We don't use opportunities to stick a knife in. We don't use opportunities to backstab people. We don't use opportunities like that. We actually follow God and stay close to him and keep our hearts after his own heart. And that's important, even when it's messy, even when it's our fault, even when it's all those things. We've got to just keep pressing through and walk by God's grace. And I think that's some of the important stuff I've picked up from today. I don't know if there's anything else just as we come to a close. Anyone else wants to chip in?
I think it's all been chipped.
Oh, we thought that a moment ago and we found some more.
Yeah.
So sometimes when you stew on these things, more comes out. I think I've heard David and Andy say to me the second half of these Bible studies is almost better than the first, because you've had time for things, sit on things and stew on it a bit, and the rich stuff comes out in the second half, really. So I don't know if there's anyone that wants to chip in, or we'll leave it there for today, and we'll pick up tomorrow at the further bits and pieces of the story and work it through. But thank you all for your comments, thank you for your wisdom, thank you for your insights. Sorry it's been a little bit rocky with the internet today. I'm not sure what's going on. I need to sort some things out on my computer and find out what's going on. But thank you all, and God bless. And to those who see this later on YouTube, it's because the original recording couldn't have the sound on it. So thank you. Okay, goodbye.
Recording stopped.